Oh, hello. So in the last video, we got set up with the Reddit API. That's what we have, this sort of Reddit variable now. And in this video, I'm going to show you how to do some basic text analysis using the official or semi-official Reddit API client that uses the official Reddit API. We're going to try to keep it kind of basic so that, if we wanted to add this to some sort of analyze function, we'll have a standard form of output. So in the input, we'll have a subreddit, maybe any filters on how far back to go for our analysis. On the output side, we'll have some sort of dictionary that identifies, the subreddit we called and some data around that. So in this case, we'll just do top links, some basic text parsing. Let's begin. So we're going to look at Learn Python again. That's sort of the main subreddit I'm interested in for everything, since good Python community. And first you'll notice this for loop. So I'm not actually using the post function yet, or the post variable yet. I'm just sort of writing my control logic, iterate through this. I'm going to use a post variable. And I like doing that because it's a little bit easier to edit in the future. And I still have access to post down the road because post is defined and we're using Jupyter. So boom, I can see just a random post in prop. And here we go. So I look at post comments, and first time I did this, I'm like, what the heck is this? A comment forest? How do I work with that? So I went on the docs for Pro, and in here, on the left, you can see comment forest. You could also search, and that's what will sort of come up. But essentially, a comment forest is a bunch of trees of comments. Because if you look at Reddit, let me just go there. You have, a post that's sort of the top of this tree, if you will, and it's like a family tree, if you haven't ever heard of the concept. And each sort of branch down, visualize it as as sort of a descendant of a parent comment. Just like when you use Reddit, here's the top comment by this person's Spadiner. Apologies on pronunciation, no clue how to say your Reddit username. Brian, much easier. He's the second one in this. So this is sort of like started at the top of the tree, and then it branches down as people have multiple comments. Those are, multiple branches, and you can sort of work with that to sort of understand, what is a comment forest probably. Well, that's, it's a bunch of these comment trees. And what we need to do is learn how to, parse all that data, because we want to look at maybe all the comments for a lot of our analysis. If you want to see two people arguing, you want to see a lot of back and forth very far down the tree. And lots of different ways you could parse it, but we'll just do the whole tree, the whole forest for that matter. So I've already written this out, sort of how it looks from a programmatic view. So you have post, that's sort of like the root of the tree, or the forest, if you will. Comment one, and then there's all these sub-comments that are more nested down. So to start with, we're just going to work with the comment forest and try to sort of visualize it textually. With code before we write the actual parser to go through the tree. For this notebook, just leaving that, we're going to use this one post that I've sort of saved the picture of and tested all the output. Click here, learn Python. This person is looking for websites. And since we're looking for links to analyze, websites are perfect. So we want to see those links. Here we go. There's that picture I had screenshotted. And with a post, every post has comments. It looks like we can, select a comment by just using that sort of slice block. So post.comments, there we have a comment. And the body is the text of that comment. We have score, other things. You can even do my favorite lazy way of doing things, dict. So, this is quite a lot of data we can access, and you can also refer back to the Pro API to find out, what's in a comment, or use help. All right, so here's the body of a text, and we're just sort of going to do a, very bare bones sort of Reddit viewer. So we have our post. I'm going to print the title, the self text, and the URL. Reddit sort of treats them differently if it's text to be referred to as text, or sort of, image post versus URL versus text post. So that's why they're in two different variables. It's kind of annoying, so I'll write a helper function to handle that nuance. And here is sort of an iterator. So we're going through every comment and then reading the body and the replies of that comment. Okay. So you'll notice we only have sort of one tabbed sort of pipe thing here. And if we look at this, we can't really see what level all these comments are. And we're not really seeing the tree. We're only looking like one dimension down, and it's sort of a little, it's not spaced out appropriately. So this is adequate. It kind of looks like the Reddit post, but we need a little bit more. Oh, here we go. Yeah, forgot I wrote this. So yeah, it only goes, let's see here. Yes, it only goes down, you see 4 common comments, and then it doesn't see sort of the nested replies of everything because we didn't really iterate through the forest. And what we need to do is go through every single comment. It could be 10 levels deep, and we don't want to write 10 for loops. So that's where this thing called recursion comes through. It comes in handy. And recursion is where you write a function that you might apply on itself. So things that you're doing sort of the same algorithm over and over, you can use recursion to handle. In a tree, if we go to this Reddit post, this comment or this comment down here, also has children. It has a descendant, this child comment, and a parent comment. So it's a very it's a self-similar structure. There's different subtrees that you can iterate in the same way. So that's why recursion sort of fits in nicely. Graph traversals are similar, but in this case, we're just going to go through and to traverse a post, we'll first get all the top level comments, and then we'll go through every single reply. So in here I have this recursive replies, and what that does is say if there are replies to that comment, like a sub-comment, check them for any more sub-comments and just apply that everywhere. And this is what's called a depth first search when you're doing trees. So we're going to sort of start, maybe I'll throw up a visual for that on the video. But, we're going to go deeply all the way down on a comment, then go back up, and then keep going to the next ones. That's sort of what will happen here. And yeah, so let's test that this works. Okay, and also I included this level parameter. It's kind of helpful because it shows you how many times the function got called. And it has the added bonus of telling you how deep we are. So this is like the 3rd level nested comment, this HDD28WF person. And yeah, so it can be helpful if you want to be like, I only want to get the top 3 rows of comments. I don't want to get all those people bickering or going on these weird tangents. Or maybe you really want to see the tangent, so you want to write a filter to go, level greater than 3 or something that's informative to you. But anyways, back to the output post. So see, we have comments, traverse post, very easy function to get everything, perfectly parsed out for us to have every single comment and how deep in the tree it is. We'll just run this, output post, boom. Here's the post, little dash, dash, dash. And we can see all the nesting with these little tabs with the pipes. So that's how all the comments are. And if you wanted to verify, you could look up here and see that, it is the same number of posts. Everything looks right. So now that we've got traversing out of the way, we can move on to sort of taking that text and treating it like a normal NLP problem, natural language processing. So like sentiment analysis, searching for a word, extracting links. All of that, takes what's called a corpus, a list of text. Maybe some information about where that text is stored, and then it does very similar analysis on that. Look at the text, find these patterns in it, apply this code to look for this thing, etc., etc. So you can really use anything about NLP or anything NLP related can be done. So you could use this sort of all your sort of NLP stuff. If you know any, you're ready to go now. So this is sort of the data processing. So I'm writing this helper function here, get post text. Say someone has a URL link, like they're linking to a blog in a subreddit. To me, I want that to be the URL. I want to see the URL as the text because the self text will be empty, but the URL field will be filled. So I'm sort of treating post text as URL or self text in this case. And yeah, so now we need to write a function to extract all the links in text. I've just sort of stubbed it out for now. Data equals squirrely brackets, and we'll need to fill in that function and test it out. Here we go. We have the post that I'm using for this. That's the same one from above. Traverse it, and then this is sort of the control logic. So we want to get rows for every comment. Did this comment contain a link? And we'll get that information returned to us. And we have level comment body. And, yeah. So here we're just going to try to write code to parse URLs. I have example with a URL, example without a URL. And down here, we're using the standard URLs parse library in Python and regex to help us sort of parse a URL nicely. So I'll show you what that looks like. So first off, what is some good regex that looks for links? Well, I just searched it in Google and I found the Stack Overflow answer. Regex is kind of a pain, but so many people have solved similar problems in the past, so just search for things. Eventually you'll get comfortable, but no need to really reinvent the wheel. So I just plugged that in, and boom, it found, okay, this is a URL. And if it doesn't have a URL, I'm going to put the same pattern in. So this is the string matching pattern, and this is the text that we're testing. The example without a URL, what do you know? Didn't find a URL. That's great. Now, once we have a URL, we also want to know, what's the root domain? Is it reddit.com? Is it Facebook? Is it some random link, news article on Facebook or Reddit, for example? So this will, this is this Python library that helps you sort of decompose the URL. What's its building blocks? Do we really care about HTTP versus HTTPS? Probably not, but we're more interested in like the netloc and the path. And if you're interested in other things, it's a good library for parsing URLs, just like you'd expect. It's called URL parse. Okay, so now we have code to identify URLs. But what we also need to do now is parse it, and we want to count, what URLs are out there. So, are people linking to automate the boring stuff? Is there some other website I've never heard of that's really important in the subreddit? Kind of interesting to see that. So I'll start off again. We have post. This is a different submission. I should use, change this to the one we were using earlier. Okay. And right now we didn't find anything. I thought I fixed that. Oh, I know what the issue is. So if you look at text in this case, there is no URL in here. So we weren't able to identify one with this code block. But I assure you, if you run this code on all text, you will find URLs. So instead of just doing the post text, we need to get every comment text and run that through. This up here is just useful for debugging. I'm going to skip ahead to the actual function definition. So here we go. You know what? I'll just delete this because that's kind of confusing. Okay. So we have extract link information. That's our function. All it does is find all the URLs, just like we did here. And then for each URL that was found, parse it using the Python URL parser, and then take the netloc, so sort of the root domain, and add that to a counter. And we're using Defaultdict, super nice because you don't have to, it just saves you some boilerplate Python code that's really standard. Like if you're trying to add something, you need to be like dictionary exists, dictionary sub a, or sub reddit.com, add one to it. The issue is we don't have reddit.com, so you got to write some silly boilerplate like reddit.com and get 0, whatever. But if you use a defaultdict, the default value will be 1 in this case. So we're using a defaultdict of type int. Oh, sorry, it's not 1, it's 0. So a defaultdict of 0. Defaultdict. Let me just bring this up here. So defaultdict int. There you go. So it makes it so you don't have to sort of write some extra little boilerplate. Pretty handy with counting applications. Okay, so we've got our defaultdict. We're going to add that to root domains. And for every sort of text, we're just going to return a whole nother dictionary. and then we can combine those dictionaries to count things, because if you're trying to sum up everything, addition is, what's the one, commutative, one of those math theorems or one of those properties where it doesn't matter the order you do it, it's all going to end up in it. So we can group them however we want. All right, so here we go. We have a post, so we're going to do get domains. We've got our Defaultdict, all the domains for that post. Now get me all the comments. And then we're going to make our text. This is like a corpus in NLP, if you ever see that term, like I was describing earlier too. It's sort of the list of all the text that we're going to look at. And yeah, same function as before. I just sort of wrote it out. Yeah, extract link information, get all domains, count them. And here we go. We're going to run it. I've already run this. It fails. It might work for you because this changes over time. But we're getting this error, and it's kind of a funky one. Recursion is always a thing where errors are a little unintuitive. So you see we got recursive replies, recursive complies, and this is it a Stack Overflow? I believe it can be a Stack Overflow depending on when it gets caught by the program. So a little trivia question, what is a Stack Overflow? But in this case, we're having an issue. Let's see, if I scroll down to the bottom, it'll show us the exact error. So we can see more comments, object has no attribute replies. Now we need to figure out what that means. What happened with recursion is it was sort of showing all these function calls got applied into itself. And on this one, that's like 8 levels deep or something, we got an issue. So yeah, if you want to solve this bug, I've just stored the ID of the submission. And what happened is the Pro API does sort of lazy loading through this more comments field. So if you were to look at post.comments, I believe it'll show up here. Let me just, so that's a generator. If I do the list form, I believe it'll show us everything. Nope, that's the wrong post, is it? Apologies. Where are we at here? So we have, posts with a lot of responses is what I need to pull up here, because that's what gives the issue. Or you know what, instead of storing that post, I'm going to just get the ID real quick since I have it from this recursive fail here. So if I do post.id, I will find that error ID for you. Okay, so here we go. This will always fail. List post.comments. So see this, there's lots of comments. And what happened was one of these comments, what's it called? Where are we at here? Let's do 4 comment in post.comments. I think this might fail it. Nope, okay. It's kind of funny. I swear something else happened when I did this before. It's fine. Yeah, the worst part about programming is also finding bugs and then replicating bugs. So right now I cannot replicate this bug for you. But I guess take my word for it. What happened was we got this more comments issue. And what we need to do is if we see a more comments, that means it wasn't loaded all the way. We need to tell Pro, hey, I actually want to see all the comments, so could you please go back and download them for me? So what we write here is first import more comments, and then if we see a more comments instance, just sort of expand that. And then we'll use that as the replies. Because of how it works with like more comments not being nested, I tested this out. We need to make sure our level information is still the same. So we need to, decrement it by 1 to sort of keep the level. And you can play around with that if you don't trust me on it. Recursion isn't the most fun. And yeah, this is sort of like some lazy loading from Pro. So if we run this now, then it'll work. Now we got all of our comments, and you can see these go quite deep. So it's probably one of these comments that gave us the bug, because Pro by default won't get every comment unless you ask for it. All right, so we got that bug fixed. We're just going to rerun what I had before. And the biggest thing about writing code is, try to make it work. If it breaks, not a big deal, just fix it. I love using Jupyter for sort of a playground for code, because if we were running a whole file, it'd be kind of hard to sort of get a common object, explore it without rerunning everything just right. So with Jupyter, you can really step into things quite nicely. And yeah, so here's analyze subreddit. It intakes a name. Same thing as before, I just sort of added a parameter for name here. Right now we have weak and limit hard-coded, but you could make those arguments as well. And now we've pulled out all these domains. So we can see the Python docs, surprisingly, are top this week. I guess not surprisingly, because it's sort of the official learning Python solution. Then YouTube, popular, GitHub. But what's more interesting to me is, what are these sites that aren't like official sources? You could say YouTube is pretty much the best video sharing site, unless you're a Vimeo hipster, which I sometimes want to be. GitHub, super official. Udemy's pretty open, strong name, but like the first non-official name is realpython.com. And if we extend this filter out, instead of just doing the top 10 posts over a week to like a year and we get 1,000, more information comes out. That's kind of interesting. All right, so thank you for watching. Next video, I'm going to go over cleaning up this a little bit. So you'll notice that we have YouTube, www. Well, this one is youtube.com, and we should probably merge those together because they're really the same website for our purposes, unless you're trying to analyze, the nuances between people who type www or people who don't. But yeah, we'll go through that all in the next one. Thanks again for watching.